Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberty, watching the stars through the main viewing screen. His ship was exploring the Kepler 442 system, looking for planets that humans could live on. The mission was going well until the sensors started beeping loudly. "Captain, we have a large ship coming toward us," said Lieutenant Lisa Brooks from her position at the tactical station. Her voice was calm but worried. "It's bigger than anything in our files." Jake walked over to look at her screen. The alien ship was massive, at least 10 times the size of the Liberty. It looked like a giant sword floating in space, covered in weapons and armor plating. Strange lights blinked along its dark hull. "Try to talk to them, Amy," Jake said to Dr. Amy Foster at the communication station. "Let's see if they're friendly." Amy worked at her controls, sending out greeting messages in 12 different languages. The response came quickly, but it wasn't what they hoped for. The alien voice was deep and harsh, speaking through their translation system. "Small creatures, you will stop your ship and prepare for inspection. You are in Zephyrian space without permission." Jake stepped forward. "This is Captain Morrison of the human vessel USS Liberty. We didn't know this was your territory. We're explorers looking for new worlds. We mean no harm." The alien voice laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Humans, we have heard of your weak species. I am War Commander Thexval of the Zephyrian Empire. Your people live on 17 worlds that belong to us now. You will surrender immediately." "I think there's been a mistake," Jake said carefully. "Those are human colonies. Our people have lived there for over 100 years. Surely we can work out some kind of agreement." Commander Paul Carter, the ship's engineer, quietly moved to his station and began working on the engines. He could see where this was going, and they might need to leave quickly. "There is no mistake, human," Thexval said. "The Zephyrian Empire has conquered 17 star systems. We take what we want. Your colonies have resources we need. Your people will leave or die." Jake felt his stomach drop. There were 12 million humans living in those colonies. Families, children, entire cities full of people who had never heard anyone. "Commander Thexval, please listen. We can share those worlds. There's enough space for everyone. We can trade with you, share our technology." "You speak like prey trying to bargain with hunters," the alien commander said. "Humans are weak. Your ships are small. Your weapons are toys. We have destroyed species much stronger than yours." On the screen, they could see smaller ships launching from the massive alien vessel. Each one was still larger than the Liberty and bristled with weapons. Lisa counted at least 20 of them forming an attack formation. "Captain, those ships are powering up weapons," Lisa reported. "They're going to fire on us." Jake had to make a choice. He could surrender and maybe save his crew, but that would mean abandoning millions of humans to an alien empire that clearly saw them as nothing more than pests to be removed. Or he could fight and probably get his people killed. "Amy, send a message to Earth immediately," Jake ordered. "Tell them what's happening here. Include everything we've recorded." "Already done, Captain," Amy said, her fingers flying over her controls. Message sent on the emergency channel. The first energy blast from the alien ships lit up the space around them. Paul had the engines ready and pushed them to maximum power. The Liberty shook as enemy fire barely missed them. "These humans try to run." Thexval's voice came through the speakers. "Destroy them. Let this be a lesson to all who refuse the Empire." More shots came their way. Lisa fired back with their weapons, but the small human lasers barely scratched the alien ship's armor. The Liberty was fast, but the enemy ships were faster. "Paul, can you get us out of here?" Jake asked. "Working on it, Captain," Paul said, sweat running down his face. "I'm pushing the jump drive past its safety limits. If this works, we'll be halfway to Earth in one jump. If it doesn't work, we'll be scattered across space as atoms." An alien energy beam hit the Liberty's rear section, causing explosions throughout the ship. The lights flickered and smoke filled the bridge. Lisa was thrown from her chair as another hit shook them. "Now would be good, Paul," Jake said, helping Lisa back to her feet. "Jump drive ready," Paul announced. "Hold on to something." The stars outside stretched into lines of light, and then they were gone, leaving the alien ships far behind. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The Zephyrians had made their intentions clear. They wanted human space, and they were willing to kill everyone to get it. As the Liberty raced toward Earth, Jake thought about what War Commander Thexval had said. The aliens saw humans as weak prey, easy to defeat and push around. They thought human weapons were toys and human ships were no threat. Jake almost smiled, despite everything that had just happened. The Zephyrians had clearly never studied human history very carefully. If they had, they would know that humans had been fighting wars for thousands of years. They had built weapons that could destroy entire cities and fought battles that lasted for decades. But the aliens would learn. Jake was certain of that. They would learn exactly what happened when someone threatened human families and human homes. The Zephyrians thought they were hunting prey, but they were about to discover they had picked a fight with predators. "How long until we reach Earth?" Jake asked. 6 hours at this speed, Paul answered. "The jump drive took us most of the way, but it's burned out now. We'll need major repairs before we can use it again." "That's fine," Jake said. "We need to warn everyone anyway. Amy, prepare a full report for military command. Include everything. About their weapons, ships, and numbers. Also include their exact words about our colonies." "Yes, Captain," Amy said. "Should I recommend evacuation of the outer colonies?" Jake looked at the screen showing the stars ahead of them. Somewhere out there, 12 million humans were living their lives, not knowing that an alien empire wanted to remove them from their homes. "No," Jake said finally. "Recommend that we fight. The Zephyrians want a war and they're going to get one." President Maria Santos sat at the head of the long table in the emergency meeting room, deep under the Capitol building. Around her, the most important people in human government and military were arguing about what to do. The news from Captain Morrison had reached Earth just hours ago and everyone was scared. Admiral Chris Taylor, head of the Space Navy, was showing pictures on the big screen. The alien ship Morrison encountered was at least 2 kilometers long. Our biggest ships are only 300 meters. They have weapons that could destroy our vessels with single shots. Defense Secretary Alan Ross shook his head. "We can't fight them, Admiral. The numbers don't make sense. If they control 17 star systems, they must have thousands of ships. We have maybe 200 combat vessels total." General Kate Williams, commander of the Marine Corps, disagreed. "So what do you want us to do, Alan? Just give up? Tell 12 million colonists to pack up and leave their homes because some aliens want their planets? If it saves their lives, yes," Ross answered. "We can rebuild somewhere else. We can negotiate for time to evacuate everyone safely." Colonel Ryan Murphy, the intelligence officer, was reading from his reports. "We don't know much about these Zephyrians yet, but what we do know isn't good. They've conquered 17 star systems in the past 50 years. Every species they've encountered has either surrendered or been destroyed." Maya Chen, who spoke for the Colonial Alliance, stood up angrily. "Those aren't just colonies you're talking about. They're our homes. My family has lived on New Texas for 4 generations. My grandchildren were born there. We're not going to run away just because some alien bullies tell us to." President Santos listened to all of them argue for an hour before she finally held up her hand for silence. "What do our military experts really think? Can we fight them and win?" Admiral Taylor was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, Madam President, in a straight fight they would probably destroy us. But humans don't always fight straight fights." Dr. Elena Rodriguez, head of weapons research, had been quiet during most of the meeting. Now she spoke up. "There are things about our military capabilities that even most people in this room don't know about. Projects that have been secret for decades." "What kind of projects?" President Santos asked. Elena looked around the table carefully. "The kind that were developed because we learned from Earth's history. We know what happens to species that can't defend themselves. We've been preparing for this day since we first left Earth." She activated her own screen, showing what looked like peaceful mining stations and research bases. "These installations throughout human space aren't exactly what they appear to be. Project Ragnarok has been building defensive weapons for 70 years disguised as civilian facilities." The room went completely quiet. Even Admiral Taylor looked surprised. "How many weapons are we talking about?" General Williams asked. "Every mining station, research base, and communication relay in human space has hidden military capabilities," Elena said. "The aliens think they're attacking farmers and scientists, They're actually attacking one of the most heavily fortified regions of space in the galaxy. Colonel Murphy leaned forward. Why wasn't intelligence informed of this project? Because it only works if the enemy doesn't know about it, Elena answered. The fewer people who knew, the safer the secret was. Captain Morrison entered the room just then, along with his crew from the Liberty. They looked tired from their emergency trip to Earth, but Jake walked straight to President Santos. Madam President, I need to show you something, he said. Amy, play the recording of our conversation with the Zephyrian commander. The room filled with the harsh voice of War Commander Thexval, demanding surrender and calling humans weak prey. When the recording ended, the room was silent again. They've already started attacking our outer colonies, Jake continued. 3. Settlements have gone dark since we left the Kepler system. These aliens aren't interested in negotiation. They want us gone, and they're willing to kill everyone to make it happen. Defense Secretary Ross still wasn't convinced. Even with hidden weapons, we're talking about fighting an empire that spans 17 star systems. The risk is enormous. The risk of not fighting is greater, President Santos said finally. If we run now, where do we run to? If we let them take our colonies, what stops them from taking Earth next? Maya Chen nodded. The colonists won't leave anyway. I know my people. They'd rather fight and die in their homes than live as refugees. Dr. Rodriguez activated another screen. There's more to Project Ragnarok than just hidden weapons. We've also been developing new technologies based on human military history. Weapons and tactics that other species have never seen before. She showed them videos of new ship designs that looked nothing like traditional human vessels. Some were tiny, fast attack ships meant to swarm larger enemies. Others were massive platforms designed to support long-range weapons. We've also been training people, General Williams added. Every colonist receives basic military training. They might look like farmers and miners, but they know how to fight. Admiral Taylor was studying the new information. It's still a huge gamble, Madam President. If we're wrong about our capabilities, the human species could be wiped out. And if we're right? President Santos asked. If we're right. The Zephyrians are about to learn why Earth conquered itself 3 times over before we ever left our solar system, Jake said quietly. President Santos looked around the table at all the worried faces. These people were responsible for the lives of every human in space. The decision they made in this room would determine whether humanity survived or died. But she thought about her own grandchildren, playing in parks on Earth. She thought about the families on the colonies, building lives among the stars. She thought about what would happen to all of them if humanity showed weakness now. Dr. Rodriguez, how quickly can you activate these hidden weapons? She asked. The ones closest to the alien advance can be ready in 48 hours. The others will take a week. Admiral Taylor, how fast can you get our fleets in position? Our combat ships can be deployed within 3 days. The reserve ships will take longer. President Santos stood up. Then we fight. Send word to all colonies to prepare their defenses. Activate Project Ragnarok and send a message to War Commander Thexval. What should the message say? Amy Foster asked. President Santos smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. Tell him that humanity declines his generous offer to surrender. Tell him that if he wants our worlds, he can come and take them. But warn him that humans have been fighting wars since before his species learned to make fire. The meeting ended with everyone hurrying to their duties. As they filed out, Colonel Murphy approached President Santos. Madam President, what if we lose? She looked at him seriously. Then at least our children will know that we didn't go quietly. But Colonel, I don't think we're going to lose. The Zephyrians made one big mistake. What's that? They think humans are prey. They're about to learn we're predators. Commander Steve Parker stood in the control room of what everyone thought was asteroid mining station Delta 7. The workers around him looked like normal miners, but they were all actually military personnel who had been training for this moment, for years. On his screen, similar scenes were playing out at dozens of locations across human space. Activation sequence initiated, reported Lieutenant Jenny Torres from her position at the main console. Weapon systems coming online in mining stations throughout sectors 4 through 12. What the Zephyrians didn't know was that every human installation built in the last 70 years had a secret. The mining lasers that carved up asteroids could be turned into ship-killing weapons. The massive engines used to move asteroids could launch them like bullets at enemy fleets. Even the simple communication towers could jam enemy signals or guide human missiles to their targets. Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched from the main command center on Earth as her life's work finally revealed itself. Project Ragnarok is fully operational, she announced to Admiral Taylor and the other commanders. We have 437 hidden weapon platforms online across human space. On the colony world of New Texas, Captain Nina Walsh was meeting with the local militia leaders. These weren't professional soldiers, but they had all served in Earth's military before becoming colonists. Now they were ready to defend their homes. The aliens think we're just farmers and miners, said Joe Martinez, who ran the colony's main agricultural center. They don't know that half of us are veterans from the Mars campaigns. Susan Harris, who managed the spaceport, nodded in agreement. My cargo handling crew used to load ammunition on warships. We know exactly how to turn civilian equipment into military hardware. Captain Walsh looked at the group of colonists around her, men and women who had come to New Texas to build peaceful lives now preparing for war. The plan is simple. We make the aliens think they're winning while we bleed them slowly. Every ship they lose, every soldier they sacrifice, makes them weaker for the final battle. Back on Earth, Paul Carter worked with Dr. Rodriguez's team to modify civilian technology for combat. The results were impressive and terrifying. Cargo ships became troop transports with hidden armor and weapons. Passenger liners turned into hospital ships that could also serve as command centers. Even small personal spacecraft received stealth systems and missile launchers. The beauty of our approach, Paul explained to a group of engineers, is that everything looks innocent until the moment we need it. A mining ship looks like a mining ship until it starts shooting. Colonel Beth Hunter, the military's top strategic planner, was coordinating with resistance cells throughout human space. Her plan was based on thousands of years of human military history, drawing lessons from every guerrilla war ever fought on Earth. The Zephyrians fight like most galactic species, she explained to her staff. They believe in honor, direct confrontation, and overwhelming force. They've never faced an enemy that fights dirty. Her plan involved letting the aliens advance deep into human territory while constantly attacking their supply lines and communication networks. Human forces would retreat when faced with superior numbers, but they would leave behind hidden weapons and booby traps. We're going to teach them that occupying human space is like grabbing a poisonous snake, Beth said. The harder they squeeze, the more it's going to hurt. Meanwhile, Captain Morrison had been given command of a small fleet of ships that were supposed to rescue colonists from the border worlds, but when he arrived at the first colony, he found that the locals had different ideas. We're not leaving, said Commander Joe Martinez, now wearing the uniform of the colonial militia. This is our home and we're going to fight for it. The colony looked peaceful from space, but Morrison could see the hidden defensive positions and camouflaged weapon emplacements. The colonists had been busy since receiving the evacuation order. Joe, the Zephyrian advance fleet will be here in 6 days, Morrison warned. You have maybe 200 people with light weapons. They'll have thousands of professional warriors. Joe smiled grimly. Captain, you're forgetting something. We're not just 200 people. We're 200 humans who are angry about aliens trying to take our homes. That's a very different thing. As if to prove his point, the colony's children were helping to prepare defenses. Kids who should have been in school were instead learning to operate communication equipment and medical supplies. Their parents had taught them that sometimes peaceful people had to fight to stay peaceful. Dr. Rodriguez's secret weapons were already proving their worth in small skirmishes along the border. Zephyrian scout ships had been disappearing without warning, destroyed by weapons they never saw coming. Mining stations that looked completely harmless would suddenly light up with laser fire, then go back to looking like innocent civilian facilities. The psychological effect on the Zephyrians was exactly what the humans had hoped for. The aliens were used to fighting enemies they could see and understand. Fighting an enemy that hid weapons everywhere and turned civilian facilities into military bases was something completely new to them. Captain Susan Harris reported from her position near the front lines. The alien scouts are getting nervous. They're taking twice as long to investigate each system because they don't know what's a real threat and what isn't. This was exactly what Colonel Hunter had planned. By making the Zephyrians afraid of every human installation, she was slowing down their advance and forcing them to waste time and resources on unnecessary precautions. But the humans weren't just playing defense. Teams led by commanders like Tony Adams were already behind enemy lines, gathering intelligence and preparing sabotage missions. They moved through space using civilian ships that looked completely harmless, then struck at Zephyrian supply bases and communication relays. The aliens guard their military installations heavily, Tony reported to Admiral Taylor. But they completely ignore anything that looks civilian. We can get close enough to touch their ships before they realize we're a threat. The most devastating human advantage was their approach to war itself. Where the Zephyrians saw combat as a test of strength and honor, humans saw it as a problem to be solved using any method that worked. There were no rules about fighting fair or showing mercy to enemies who threatened human families. As the first major Zephyrian fleets approached human space, they found themselves facing defenses unlike anything they had encountered before. Every asteroid could be a weapon. Every civilian station could be a fortress. Every peaceful-looking human ship could be carrying enough firepower to destroy a Zephyrian cruiser. War Commander Thexval received reports from his advanced scouts with growing confusion. They report weapons appearing from nowhere, then disappearing. Again. Civilian installations that fight like military bases. Human ships that look like cargo haulers but fight like warships. His aide, a young Zephyrian warrior named Kethmore, was equally puzzled. Perhaps the humans have hidden their true military capabilities, War Commander. Thexval considered this possibility. In his experience, species that could fight effectively did so openly, with pride in their military strength. The idea of hiding weapons and pretending to be peaceful was foreign to Zephyrian thinking. No, he decided finally. This is the desperation of a weak species trying to delay the inevitable. We will crush their pathetic tricks and show them the true meaning of warfare. But deep in human space, President Santos was receiving reports that made her smile. The hidden weapons were working perfectly. The colonial militias were inflicting surprising casualties on Zephyrian forces, and most importantly, the aliens still had no idea what they were really facing. How long can we keep them guessing? She asked Dr. Rodriguez. Until they commit their main fleets, Elena answered. Once they bring their full military power into our space, we'll show them exactly what 70 years of secret preparation can accomplish. The trap was set. The Zephyrians thought they were fighting farmers and miners with improvised weapons. They were actually about to face one of the most sophisticated military forces in the galaxy, one that had been specifically designed to fight enemies who thought humans were weak prey. The real war was about to begin. War Commander Thexval stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sword of Dominion, watching his massive fleet approach the human colony system of Centauri. Behind him stretched the combined might of the 3rd, 7th, and 9th battle fleets, over 800 warships carrying 2.5 million Zephyrian warriors. The humans have placed their defensive fleet directly in our path, reported his tactical officer. 120 ships, War Commander. They mean to fight us here. Thexval studied the formation of human vessels on his screen. They looked pitifully small compared to his massive fleet. The largest human ship was barely 1/10 the size of his smallest cruiser. They are either very brave or very stupid, he said to his officers. Perhaps they think their tiny fleet can somehow stop the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Chris Taylor stood on the bridge of the human flagship UNS Defender, looking at the sea of alien ships approaching his small fleet. He knew that, in a straight fight, the humans would be destroyed in minutes, but this wasn't going to be a straight fight. All ships, prepare for Operation Wolfpack, he commanded into his communication system. Remember, we're not here to win a glorious battle. We're here to hurt them as much as possible before we leave. Captain Mike Roberts, commanding the fast attack ship UNS Hornet, acknowledged the order along with dozens of other ship commanders. His ship was small and lightly armed, but it was also faster than anything in the Zephyrian fleet. The battle began when the Zephyrian fleet opened fire at maximum range. Massive energy beams lit up space, missing the nimble human ships that immediately began to scatter in all directions. "They're running," Thexval's tactical officer reported with satisfaction. "The humans flee like cowards before our superior firepower." But the human retreat was anything but cowardly. As the Zephyrian ships pursued, they found themselves being picked apart by coordinated attacks. Captain Roberts led a group of fast ships in hit-and-run strikes against the alien supply vessels and communication ships. "Target their weak points and run," Roberts ordered his pilots. "Don't try to fight. They're big ships head-to-head. Just hurt them and get out." Captain Jenny Torres commanded a squadron of ships disguised as cargo haulers. When Zephyrian cruisers moved to intercept what they thought were fleeing civilians, they discovered that the cargo ships carried enough missiles to cripple a battleship. The Zephyrians had never faced tactics like this before. In their military culture, warriors fought directly, seeking glorious combat against worthy enemies. The idea of attacking supply lines and avoiding fair fights was completely alien to their way of thinking. "Why do they not stand and fight?" Thexval demanded. "Where is their honor? Where is their pride?" His aide, Kethmore, was studying the tactical displays with growing concern. "War Commander, we have lost 37 ships already, and we have destroyed only 5 human vessels. Their tactics are unusual." The humans were leading the Zephyrian fleet deeper into the Centauri system, and Admiral Taylor was pleased with how the plan was working. Every few minutes, another group of human ships would appear from behind asteroids or space stations, attack a portion of the alien fleet, then disappear again. But the real surprise was still waiting for the Zephyrians. Commander Steve Parker watched from his hidden control station as the alien fleet moved into the kill zone. All around the system, disguised weapon platforms were tracking the enemy ships, waiting for the signal to reveal themselves. "All Ragnarok stations, this is Control," Parker announced. "The enemy is in position. Execute activation sequence now." Across the Centauri system, things that had looked like harmless mining stations and research facilities suddenly showed their true nature. Massive weapons that had been hidden for decades opened fire simultaneously, catching the Zephyrian fleet completely by surprise. Asteroid mining stations revealed particle cannons powerful enough to punch through battleship armor. Communication relays launched swarms of missiles that had been stored in hidden compartments. Even small research stations contributed to the attack with laser batteries that could destroy fighter craft. "What is happening?" Thexval demanded, as his ships began taking heavy damage from weapons that seemed to appear from nowhere. "Where are these attacks coming from?" His tactical officer was frantically trying to identify the sources of the incoming fire. "War Commander, the attacks appear to be coming from civilian installations, but that's impossible. Our intelligence showed these were only mining and research facilities." The Zephyrian fleet was now trapped in a crossfire between the mobile human ships and the hidden weapons platforms. Worse, the platforms were networked together, sharing targeting information and coordinating their attacks for maximum effectiveness. Captain Alex Morgan led a group of human ships in a boarding assault on a damaged Zephyrian cruiser. His Marines, led by Lieutenant Colonel Tony Adams, used combat techniques that the aliens had never seen before. "Move fast and hit hard," Adams instructed his troops as they cut through the enemy ship's hull. "These aliens are bigger and stronger than us, individually, but we fight as a team." The Marines used powered armor that made them nearly as strong as the Zephyrians, but they also used weapons and tactics designed for close-quarters combat. Instead of seeking honorable single combat like Zephyrian warriors, the humans fought in coordinated groups using every advantage they could find. The alien warriors were confused and demoralized by fighting techniques that seemed to ignore all concepts of fair combat. The humans used smoke grenades to hide their movements, explosives to create barriers, and even turned off the ship's gravity to confuse enemies who weren't prepared for zero-gravity fighting. Within an hour, the humans had captured 3 Zephyrian ships and were using them to attack the rest of the alien fleet. The sight of their own vessels firing on them was devastating to Zephyrian morale. But Admiral Taylor wasn't finished with his surprises. The human retreat had been carefully planned to draw the Zephyrians into the most dangerous part of the system. Execute Phase 3, Taylor ordered. Captain Lisa Murphy, commanding a group of ships hiding behind the system's largest gas giant, led her force in a flanking attack on the rear of the Zephyrian formation. These ships had been modified with stealth systems that made them nearly invisible until they opened fire. The aliens found themselves under attack from every direction at once. The mobile human fleet was harassing their front lines, the hidden weapons platforms were destroying their center, and now a fresh force was attacking their supply ships and command vessels. Thexval realized that his force was being systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought unlike anything he had ever encountered. "Order all ships to withdraw to the outer system," he commanded. "We need to regroup and reassess the human capabilities." But the humans weren't going to let them withdraw easily. As the Zephyrian ships tried to retreat, they found their path, blocked by more hidden weapons and human ships that seemed to appear from empty space. By the time the surviving Zephyrian vessels finally escaped the Centauri system, they had lost over 200 ships and almost 400,000 warriors. The human losses were only 15 ships and 3,000 personnel. Thexval sat in his command chair, staring at the casualty reports with disbelief. "This is impossible. How can such a small fleet inflict such damage on a force 8 times their size?" Kethmore was equally stunned. "War Commander, the humans fight without honor. They hide weapons in civilian facilities. They attack supply lines instead of fighting directly, and they use tactics that no civilized species would employ." "Perhaps," Thexval said slowly. "That is why they are still dangerous, despite their small numbers. They do not fight like civilized beings. They fight like wild animals protecting their territory." The war commander was beginning to understand that he had seriously underestimated the humans, but his pride would not let him admit that the inferior human species might actually be a formidable enemy. "Send word to the High Command," he ordered. "Request additional fleets. If the humans want to fight like animals, we will bring enough force to exterminate them completely." But back in the Centauri system, Admiral Taylor was already preparing for the next phase of the war. The Battle of Centauri had been a test, a chance to see how the Zephyrians would respond to human tactics. Now that he knew how the aliens fought, he could plan accordingly. "Send word to all human fleets," Taylor ordered. "Phase 1 is complete. The enemy has revealed their capabilities and weaknesses. Now we move to Phase 2. The Zephyrians thought they had been fighting the human military at full strength. They were wrong. The real war was just beginning, and humanity was about to show them exactly why Earth's children had conquered their own planet 3 times before reaching the stars. The aliens wanted a war. They were going to get one, but not the kind of war they expected. They were about to learn that when you threaten human families and human homes, you're not fighting soldiers. You're fighting something much more dangerous. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Centauri, and War Commander Thexval was growing frustrated. His forces had claimed 7 human systems, but the cost had been enormous. For every human ship destroyed, the Zephyrians lost 3 of their own. For every human world occupied, thousands of Zephyrian warriors died in endless guerrilla attacks. "The humans fight like ghosts," complained Sub-Commander Vextal during the morning briefing. "They attack our supply convoys, destroy our communication stations, then disappear before we can respond. We control their worlds during the day, but at night they emerge from hiding and kill our soldiers." Thexval studied the tactical reports with growing unease. The humans were using tactics that no civilized species would employ. They hid weapons in hospitals and schools. They disguised military bases as farms and factories. They even used children to carry messages and gather intelligence. "How can we fight an enemy that has no honor?" he asked his officers. "How can we defeat people who turn every civilian into a potential warrior?" What Thexval didn't know was that his questions were being discussed in emergency meetings on Earth. President Santos sat with her advisors, watching reports from the occupied colonies with a mixture of pride and sadness. "The colonists are holding up better than we expected," reported General Kate Williams. "But they can't fight a defensive war forever. We need to take the offensive soon." Admiral Chris Taylor nodded in agreement. "Our intelligence networks have gathered enough information about Zephyrian tactics and technology. Colonel Hunter's plan is ready for execution." Colonel Beth Hunter stood and activated the large screen in the meeting room. It showed a map of human space with red areas marking Zephyrian-controlled systems and blue areas showing human strongholds. Operation Prometheus will hit them in 17 systems simultaneously, she explained. While they're focused on occupying, our colonies will destroy their forward bases and cut off their supply lines. The plan was audacious and dangerous. Instead of trying to retake the occupied colonies directly, the humans would strike deep into Zephyrian-controlled space, attacking targets the aliens thought were safe. Captain Jake Morrison, now promoted to admiral, would lead the main strike force. His target was the Zephyrian Forward Command Base at Kepler 438, where War Commander Thexval coordinated the entire invasion. The intelligence from Agent Frankstone's spy network shows the base is heavily defended, Morrison told his captains during their final briefing. But it's also where they store supplies for the entire offensive. If we can destroy it, their whole invasion will collapse. Agent Stone had spent months building a network of human operatives throughout Zephyrian space. Many of them were former prisoners who had escaped from alien labor camps. Others were colonists who had been thought dead, but had actually gone underground to fight as resistance fighters. Lisa Murphy, now commanding her own ship, raised a concern. Admiral, the approach to Kepler 438 is heavily guarded. How do we get close enough to attack without being detected? Morrison smiled grimly. The same way we've been fighting this whole war. We don't look like what we are. The human strike fleet consisted of ships that appeared to be civilian vessels. Cargo haulers, passenger liners, even old mining ships that looked ready for the scrapyard. But each vessel had been secretly modified with military-grade weapons, armor, and stealth systems. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had outdone herself with the modifications. The cargo ships could launch fighter squadrons from their holds. The passenger liners carried enough missiles to destroy a space station. Even the mining ships had been fitted with weapons that could punch through battleship armor. The beauty of our approach, Paul Carter explained to his engineering teams, is that the aliens have learned to fear human military vessels, but they still think civilian ships are harmless. As the human fleets moved toward their targets, the EE, colonies erupted in coordinated uprisings. Resistance fighters who had been hiding for months suddenly revealed themselves, attacking Zephyrian garrisons and supply depots. On New Texas, Joe Martinez led a force of colonial militia in an assault on the alien command center. His fighters moved through tunnels they had dug over the past 3 months, emerging inside the fortified compound like deadly surprises. Remember, Joe told his people as they prepared for the attack, these aliens think we're just farmers and miners. Let's show them what happens when you threaten a farmer's family. The Zephyrian garrison was caught completely off guard. They had been expecting attacks from outside their fortifications, not from underneath them. The human fighters used weapons and tactics that turned the alien size and strength advantages into liabilities. Instead of fighting in open areas where the larger Zephyrians could use their reach and power, the humans forced close-quarters combat in narrow tunnels and cramped rooms. They used explosives to collapse corridors, trapping alien forces in small groups that could be defeated by coordinated human teams. Meanwhile, Admiral Morrison's fleet approached Kepler 438, disguised as refugee ships fleeing the fighting in the colonies. The Zephyrian patrols barely glanced at them, assuming they were more human civilians running from the war. All ships maintain civilian formations until we reach the target, Morrison ordered. Don't reveal your true nature until I give the signal. Captain Nina Walsh, commanding the disguised battleship UNS Freedom, reported from her position in the formation. Admiral, we're receiving escort offers from Zephyrian patrol ships. They want to protect us from human raiders. Morrison almost laughed. The aliens were offering to escort human warships to their main base, not knowing they were helping their enemies get into perfect attack position. Accept their escort graciously, Captain Walsh, he ordered. Thank them for their concern for human civilians. The Zephyrian base at Kepler 438 was a massive installation, built into several asteroids, connected by defensive stations and surrounded by a fleet of over 100 ships. It looked impregnable, which was exactly why the aliens hadn't expected a direct attack. Commence Operation Prometheus. Morrison announced as his refugee fleet moved into the heart of the Zephyrian formation. All ships, reveal weapons, and engage targets. The transformation was spectacular and terrifying. Cargo holds open to disgorge fighter squadrons. Passenger liners sprouted missile launchers and beam weapons. Mining ships revealed military-grade armor and battleship guns. The Zephyrian defenders were caught in the worst possible position. Their own escort ships were mixed in with the attacking humans, making it impossible to fire without hitting their own vessels. The base's defensive systems had been designed to fight attacks from outside, not from ships already inside the defensive perimeter. Captain Alex Morgan led his boarding parties in assaults on the main base installations. His Marines moved through the asteroid complex like a plague, using combat techniques that left the Zephyrian defenders confused and demoralized. Set charges on everything important, Morgan ordered his troops. Communications, supplies, weapons, storage, life support. If it keeps this base running, I want it destroyed. The humans had learned from their previous boarding actions. They knew that Zephyrian warriors were individually stronger and tougher, but they also knew that the aliens had never faced enemies who used teamwork, deception, and dirty fighting as natural parts of their combat doctrine. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Adams had developed new combat techniques specifically for fighting Zephyrians. Instead of trying to match the aliens' strength, his Marines used speed, surprise, and overwhelming firepower to win battles before the aliens could respond. A Zephyrian warrior is dangerous in single combat, Adams explained to his troops. But they're not used to fighting 5 humans at once, especially when we're using flash grenades, smoke screens, and explosive charges. The attack on Kepler 438 was so successful that it was over before many of the Zephyrian defenders realized they were under attack. Within 3 hours, the base was completely destroyed, along with supplies meant to support the alien invasion for 6 months. But the real devastation came from the coordinated nature of the human offensive. 17 different Zephyrian installations were hit simultaneously by forces that appeared to be harmless civilian vessels. Supply bases, communication centers, fuel depots, and repair facilities all exploded at the same time across a dozen star systems. Back on his flagship, War Commander Thexval received the reports with growing horror. They destroyed everything? All of our forward bases? Yes, War Commander, his aide Kethmore reported with a trembling voice. The humans used civilian ships to get close to our installations, then revealed hidden weapons. We lost over 300 ships and 400,000 personnel in the coordinated attacks. Thexval sat in silence for several minutes, trying to understand what had happened. The humans had just demonstrated military capabilities that matched or exceeded his own forces, but they had done it using tactics and strategies that violated every rule of civilized warfare. They fight without honor, he said finally. They disguise military vessels as civilian ships. They hide weapons in peaceful installations. They use deception and trickery instead of honest combat. Yes, War Commander, Kethmore agreed, but their tactics are also incredibly effective. Our forces are demoralized and our supply lines are in chaos. War Commander Thexval stood in the ruins of what had once been his mighty invasion fleet. After the devastating human counterattacks, he had fewer than 300 ships left from his original force of over 800. His supplies were gone, his communication networks were destroyed, and his warriors were demoralized by fighting an enemy that seemed to break every rule of civilized warfare. But his pride demanded one final gesture. If the Zephyrian Empire was going to lose this war, they would take the human homeworld with them. Set course for the Sol system, he ordered his remaining captains. We will strike at the heart of human space. Earth will burn for the humiliation they have caused us. His aide, Kethmore, was concerned about the plan. War Commander, our intelligence shows that Earth is heavily defended. The humans have been moving ships there for weeks. I don't care, Thexval snapped. The humans have made fools of us with their cowardly tactics and hidden weapons. If we destroy their homeworld, their colonies will surrender out of grief and fear. What Thexval didn't understand was that humans didn't work that way. Earth wasn't just the center of human government, it was the symbol of human determination. Attacking it would only make humans fight harder. On Earth, President Santos watched the approaching Zephyrian fleet with grim determination. "How many ships are coming, Admiral Taylor?" 297 enemy vessels, Madam President, Admiral Taylor reported. "It's everything Thexval has left." "And our defenses?" "Every human ship that can fight is already in position. Military vessels, converted civilian ships, even some of the old training vessels from the Academy. We have over 400 ships ready for battle. But the real strength of Earth's defenses wasn't just the ships. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had spent months preparing the ultimate demonstration of Project Ragnarok, a defensive network that would show the galaxy exactly what humans could accomplish when they were truly threatened. "The orbital defense platforms are fully operational," she reported. "Every satellite, space station, and orbital facility has been converted into a weapon system. The Zephyrians are flying into the most heavily armed region of space in human history." Captain Nina Walsh commanded one of the defense fleets positioned near Mars. Her ships included everything from modern warships to converted cargo haulers crewed by civilian volunteers who refused to let aliens threaten their homeworld. "Remember," she told her captains, "we're not just fighting for Earth. We're fighting for every human child who will ever look up at the stars and dream of exploring them. We're fighting for the right of humans to exist in this galaxy." Among her fleet was the UNS Liberty, now repaired and upgraded, still commanded by Captain Jake Morrison's former crew. Paul Carter had installed the most advanced weapon systems available, while Amy Foster coordinated communications between the civilian volunteers and military units. "It's fitting that we're here for the final battle," Lisa Brooks said from her position at the tactical station. "We were the first to meet these aliens, and now we'll be here when we finish them." The Battle of Sol began when the Zephyrian fleet entered the outer solar system and immediately came under attack from weapons they couldn't see or understand. Asteroid mining stations revealed themselves as weapons platforms. Communication satellites launched missiles. Even old space junk turned out to be disguised bombs that exploded when enemy ships came close. "What is this?" Thexval demanded as his ships began taking damage from every direction. "Where are all these weapons coming from?" His tactical officer was trying to track the incoming attacks, but there were too many sources. "War Commander, every human installation in this system appears to be armed. Even their garbage scows are shooting at us." Captain Roy Gibson, commanding a converted garbage collection ship, proved the point by launching a spread of missiles from his vessel's waste containers. "This is for calling us weak," he said as his improvised weapons destroyed a Zephyrian cruiser. But the most devastating surprise was still waiting for the aliens. Deep in Earth's ocean trenches and hidden in lunar caves, humanity had built weapons that violated every galactic treaty on military technology. Dr. Karen Webb had spent decades developing systems that could destroy entire fleets, but required human operators who wouldn't survive the activation. "Orbital Defense Network Alpha is ready for activation," she reported to Admiral Taylor. "All volunteer crews are in position." Commander Ray Phillips and his team of volunteers were stationed at the primary control facility. They knew that activating the system would mean their deaths, but they also knew it would end the war. "This is for every human child who deserves to grow up free," Phillips said as he began the activation sequence. The network of kinetic kill satellites came online all at once, creating a field of death around the Zephyrian fleet. Each satellite could accelerate small projectiles to incredible speeds, turning tiny pieces of metal into ship-killing bullets. The system could destroy any fleet in the solar system, but the targeting computers required human operators to function. The volunteers at each control station knew they would die when the system fired, but they also knew their sacrifice would save billions of lives. Lieutenant Janet Morris gave the final countdown. "Firing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, fire." The space around Earth lit up like a new star as thousands of kinetic projectiles tore through the Zephyrian fleet. Ships that had survived every previous battle were torn apart in seconds. Even Thexval's massive flagship was reduced to scrap metal by the devastating barrage. But some Zephyrian ships survived the initial bombardment, and the battle continued with ship-to-ship combat throughout the solar system. Captain Alex Morgan led a boarding assault on Thexval's crippled flagship, determined to capture the alien commander who had started this war. His Marines fought through the damaged ship using everything they had learned about fighting Zephyrians. They moved in coordinated teams, used every dirty trick they could think of, and showed no mercy to enemies who had threatened to exterminate their species. Lieutenant Colonel Tony Adams found Thexval in the ship's command center, still trying to coordinate his remaining forces. The alien commander was massive, nearly 3 meters tall and covered in natural armor that could stop most weapons. "Surrender, alien," Adams said, pointing his weapon at the war commander. "Your fleet is destroyed. Your war is over." Thexval looked at the small human soldier with a mixture of rage and disbelief. "You fight without honor, human. You use deception and cowardly tactics. You are not worthy opponents." Adams almost laughed. "Honor? You came to our space to kill our families and steal our worlds, and you talk about honor? Let me explain something. To you, alien. Humans don't fight for honor. We fight to protect our children and our homes. That's why you lost." The final Zephyrian ships were destroyed or captured within hours of the kinetic bombardment. The entire enemy fleet had been eliminated, with no survivors to report back to the Zephyrian Empire. In the aftermath of the battle, President Santos addressed the Galactic Council from the wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet. Her message was broadcast throughout known space, ensuring that every species would hear it. "The Zephyrian Empire came to human space believing we were weak prey," she said, standing before the twisted remains of alien warships. "They demanded that we abandon our homes and surrender our freedom. We declined their offer." She gestured to the destroyed fleet floating around Earth. "Let this be a lesson to any species that might consider threatening humanity. We are a peaceful people who want nothing more than to explore the galaxy and make friends with other civilizations. But if you mistake our peaceful nature for weakness, if you threaten our families or our homes, you will discover exactly why humans conquered their own world 3 times before reaching the stars." The message was clear and unmistakable. Humanity was no longer the weak species that had first ventured into space. They had proven themselves to be one of the most dangerous military forces in the galaxy, capable of destroying any enemy that threatened them. Admiral Jake Morrison, now in command of humanity's first forward military base beyond Sol system, received reports from scout ships throughout the region. Zephyrian colonies along the border had been mysteriously abandoned. Other alien species were withdrawing from areas near human space. Even the most aggressive galactic empires were suddenly interested in establishing diplomatic relations with Earth. "Mission accomplished," Morrison reported to President Santos. "No one will mistake human strength for weakness again." As he looked out at the stars from his command center, Morrison reflected on how much had changed since that first encounter with War Commander Thexval. The aliens had seen humans as prey to be hunted and removed. They had learned the truth, too late to save themselves. Humanity had tried to be peaceful neighbors, offering trade and friendship to the galaxy. But when that offer was rejected with violence and threats, humans had shown exactly what happened when you forced Earth's children to fight for their survival. The Zephyrians had chosen war instead of peace. They had learned, too late, that they should have left humanity alone. The message would spread throughout the galaxy. Humans were no longer victims. They were predators, and they protected their own with a ferocity that no alien species could match. Any future enemies would